Hello. If everyone can begin to get settled, the next presentation will begin shortly. Hello. If everyone can please sit down, the presentation will begin shortly. Um, Good afternoon, competitors, coaches, judges, and honored guests. Welcome to the CaseIT 2023 finals presentations. My name is Megan, and I will be your timer today. As a reminder, the CaseIT organizing committee is filming the presentations. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our judging panel. From right to left, we have Silvio Hinta, the Director of Technology for BranchUp and a Director of CIO Van. We also have Brendan McCabe, the Director of Enterprise Commercial Business for Western Canada of Microsoft. We have Clemens Adolphs, the Head of Applied Computing from OneQubit. Elizabetta Valiente, the Optimization Solutions Lead at OneQubit, as well as Eric Drexler, a machine learning researcher at OneQubit. It is also my pleasure to introduce to you the judging facilitator, Peter Tingling, the Associate Dean of the SFU BD School of Business. We are so excited for your presentation, but before we begin, we would like to remind competitors of the following presentation guidelines. You'll have 20 minutes of unprotected time to present your solution, meaning that judges are permitted to ask questions at any time during the presentation. At the conclusion of your presentation, judges will have 5 minutes to ask questions. At the end of these periods, competitors and judges are not permitted to continue speaking, even if the time ends while they're mid-sentence. I'll be using my own device to time the presentations and Q&A period. I also provide warnings at the 5, 3, 1 minute, and 30 seconds marks. Regardless, you are still responsible for keeping track of your own time. Please note that competitors are not permitted to reveal their university, country, or city of origin during or after the presentation. And just a gentle reminder for those in the audience, please remember to silence your phones. Thank you and all the best. Competitors, you may begin your presentation whenever you're ready.
You can't solve a problem on the same level in which it was created. You have to rise above it to the next level. As artificial intelligence continues to disrupt industries, it's necessary for one qubit to continue innovating within this space and innovate with the use of diffusion models. So, the core question that we're answering today is how can one qubit innovate within the diffusion model space while leveraging the future capabilities of quantum computing? So, three main questions that we're answering today is one, what is the use case? Two, what does this use case look like? And number three, who are our customers? So, when developing our recommendation, we took into account three things. One, we need high quality and an abundance of data. Two, our output has to be accurate as well as unbiased. And number three, we recognize that one qubit is a quantum company. So ultimately, today, we analyze various industry verticals to determine our use case. And we took a look at these 16 industries and broke that down further into these core eight. Through an analysis of these various criteria, number one, what is the need for AI within this industry? Number two, how much is this market growing? Number three, how feasible it is to penetrate the space with AI, given financials as well as implementation time. Fourth, how much data is available? And finally, is there a market opportunity here? So, through this analysis, we identified energy infrastructure to be the most attractive industry vertical. And within this industry vertical, we took a look at various use cases. And through our analysis using the same criteria, we identified energy distribution planning as the most attractive use case. So, why energy? Well, global demand for energy is expected to increase by 21% by the year 2040. And if we don't optimize our energy distribution systems now, we're going to need 2 times more energy than we have today. So, this is how we currently get energy. And as you can see, there is a shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy, meaning that our infrastructure also needs to change. So, this is a graph of current energy demand throughout the day. And as you can see, energy demand goes through peaks and valleys. And at times when renewable energy is not able to be produced, we use fossil fuels to substitute that. However, as we shift towards renewable energy, we need something to change. Why is this a problem? Because, for example, as seen by the 2021 Texas power crisis, over 4.5 million homes were impacted, and there were 246 deaths as a result of the power outage, highlighting the need for improved power systems planning. And governments are starting to take notice. So, for example, the US enacted the Inflation Reduction Act, allowing for $10 billion of investment in tax credits for renewable energy, meaning that utility companies need to take advantage of this shift to renewables. So now I'd like to introduce our two-pronged recommendation. One, our big idea, and two, how we're going to empower customers. I'll now pass off to Josh to talk about our first recommendation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carrie. So, I'm so happy to present to you our big idea. But before we do so, let's take a deeper dive into understanding our current power grid delivery process. Specifically, we see that it's built from four main areas. First, you'll have your energy produced. It'll then go to large transmission lines, and then to smaller localities through transformers. And last but not least, it reaches people like you and me, the consumers, whether that may be home or a business, etc. However, with the ever changing industry of electricity from fossil fuels to renewable energy, we see that a fifth stage of this process emerges, that being the energy storage facility. With that being said, we must now have to help utilities companies understand where to put them, how many, and why. And this is the problem that we're exactly solving here. Our big idea is an infrastructure planning tool that creates a map of optimal locations to help build these energy storage facilities. Specifically, energy storage facilities really must be built to fulfill uncertain energy needs. Like what Carrie mentioned, due to the peaks and troughs throughout the day, this demand is then able to be equalized through these storage facilities and further meet the supply throughout the day. Overall, our big idea is able to transform complex data into digestible plans for our clients. Specifically, you see with the data input on the left side there, that will be text data, map data, as well as imaging data. And what your outcome here is an energy storage facility plan that is easy to use and see. Specifically, let's dive a little bit deeper into our minimum viable product. We see that we've used the city of Austin, Texas. And you see that the blue lines actually represent the different power lines that we recommend you to connect, and the black circles represent the different energy storage facilities that we think you should build. A key feature I want to highlight right here is actually the ability for the client to optimize and customize their different parameters. And you can see right here the real changes happening live. Now, with that understanding, we also should understand what type of data needs to be inputted. And now let's take a deeper dive into our specific. Oh, absolutely.
Now we go. So you say the client, who exactly is the client?
Oh, the client would be utility companies.
Okay,
And we're going to touch upon that a little bit more with Ian
perfect.
after.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we just have to, I guess, now understand what data needs to be used through our diffusion modeling process that we created. Specifically, we're calling it our big idea, which is broken into three main parts. The first one being our beginning input. We see that currently our data is accessible and plentiful because we're able to access it directly from the energy and utility companies, and a lot of energy data is also made publicly available. Within this data that we're getting, inputs may include forecasted population, energy consumption, energy supply on grid, and even more. And our outcome of the first stage of this image processing clip is actually the result of every single possibility or outcome of your facility plan. However, we understand that it's not really what you want at the end of the day, which actually brings us to our second stage, which is about or integrating our client's parameters. With this image processing clip, we see that the client may select customized parameters according to their needs, and they can toggle them on or off. Some examples of toggles may include cost of implementation, your geographic preference, or even number of storage facilities. And we see that the result we get here after the second image processing clip is that you'll get one ideal plan. But most ideal plan may not always be most realistic and may not always work in every situation. Which brings us to our final G of the decision modeling being generating responsible insights. Through this final clip, we see that our big model really differentiates itself because it has a decoder which filters biased outcomes. And some of these biased outcomes may include indigenous land, understanding that we want to avoid these areas, equity of neighborhoods, because some poorer neighborhoods may be disproportionately affected, and last but not least, they could even be protected geographic areas like forestry land. Therefore, now we understand that we can come with three plans overall. And this plan is what we're recommending here for the client. It's most feasible. And we understand that they may choose one of the three because AI is not always 100% accurate. With that in mind, we're able to leverage a reinforced model to yield as high accuracy as possible. And we know this specific decision model works because we understand that it's been proven by data and that it's an extension of deep generative models. With now a better idea of our big idea, I would love to now pass it to Ian to speak more about how we can empower our clients.
Thanks, Josh. You kind of stole my thunder, but I'm going to talk about who the clients are, what their needs are, and then how our proposal is going to satisfy those needs. So, one qubit needs to work with people who control the power grid. And as we know, when we pay our electrical bill every month, that's utility companies. To give some further context, utility companies can be broken down into two different types of firms. You have your transmission firms and then your distribution firms, which you can think of as provincial and state, and then municipal. Further, when you look at the actual ownership structure of these firms, they're either privatized but heavily regulated by the government, or they're in the public domain. So, what are some key takeaways and considerations from this? First, basic geography tells us there's more municipalities to work with, so more of those kind of distribution companies. And secondly, they're going to all operate in a heavily bureaucratic environment. So, the larger the firm, the more bureaucracy and more hoops you have to jump through. So, this is a consideration when looking for potential partners. So when we look at utility companies, their job is to provide customers with electricity. But for the first time, with the climate crisis, energy security, as well as the fact that there's a transition towards renewables, is the first major challenge this industry's had in pretty much its entire existence. So there needs to be guidance to make efficient investment decisions going forward, so that way they can keep their operations going in the new world. So we're going to look at Austin as an example of an energy firm that could bring on our solution to guide their next decisions. So what are some factors that are driving grid modernization in Austin? The first is a need for a more robust grid. As Carrie mentioned briefly earlier, they had a huge crisis in 2021 when their grid froze. As climate change worsens and more severe weather events happen, there's more of a need for a robust grid. And these battery storage solutions are an answer to that. And so they need that planning tool to implement those going forward. Secondly, demand is growing. As population grows and the population begins to use more energy intensive products, such as electric vehicles, there's a need within the geography. The need for power within geographies is going to change. Thirdly, the supply going into that to fill that demand is also changing. Cities like Austin have goals to meet net energy efficient to be net neutral by 2035. There's a need to actually make sure energy is available at all times of the day, as the sun only shines for solar panels and the wind only goes at certain times. So, additionally, if Austin continues along their current process, they're going to see financial impacts. If there's maintenance, insurance claims, as well as just lost revenue for not being able to provide service, it affects their business and their feasibility going forwards. So when you take another step back, Austin Energy is in charge of keeping the lights on for the economy. So when there's an outage, example 2021, over $740 million were lost in economic activity. So when we take a step back from everything I talked about, we used Austin as an example. But when you think of any municipality, there's kind of three key takeaways from that. First, there's going to be macro factors that are driving adaptation. The need for an actual modernized grid is something that's going to push these utility companies to think about how are we going to plan for these battery implementation sites. Secondly, the actual financial implications. Their businesses, they need to stay in the black. This is a solution to make sure that their actual operations are able to do so. And finally, the state involvement. As I mentioned at the beginning, the state is heavily involved in utility operations. Um, the lights have to be on for the economy to work, and whether it's mandates or financial incentives such as grants, there's going to be states pushing, or government pushing these firms to move forward. I also wanted to talk about the future capabilities once quantum computing comes online. First, OneCubit's going to be able to analyze larger grids. So you can look at like the East Coast as an example, where you have the grid stretches from uh, just outside Texas all the way up to Quebec. Secondly, you can generate deeper insights, so actually suggesting potential power generation areas. And then thirdly, these are what you learn from working in the infrastructure space is that that knowledge can be ported over to other planning practices. So you can think of,
Sorry, may I interrupt you
yeah,
quickly?
of course.
How would quantum computing allow us greater analysis and like extending on bigger grids?
Yeah, so because as Josh mentioned, there's a lot of inputs going into this data. As you expand in grid size and start looking at greater geographies and shifting demographics and try and get more accurate insights, there's a lot more data that has to get put in. So to make actual more accurate predictions and really be able to handle that much data, because you're trying to look at the forecast, demand needs, and there's a lot of considerations. You need a computer that's powerful enough, or a system that's powerful enough to actually spit that out. So current computing uh, it can take a long time to do so, and it might not be able to actually handle the amount of data that we want to put in. Do you want to go?
The way I remember 2021 incident in Texas was a deep freeze and all their systems, all the wind generating turbine did not have antifreeze and they broke down and all of that. So are you accounting for that type of risk in your assessment here or?
Yeah. So we're looking at that's an example of a severe weather event, right? So the entire grid, whether it's extreme heat or extreme freezing, is going to shut down, and that's because the way the grid works, as Josh kind of described, is it goes straight from the power straight to your house. By having these stations set up, and that's why they're planning for them, it allows some like resistance once these disasters happen. So our tool is just a planning tool to help them implement that, and within the modeling and trying to decipher that, it's just to keep the system running as long as possible. So that could be an input or a parameter that they could incorporate to actually make that decision. Yeah, I'll just pick up where I left off. So the last thing is that the knowledge you learn from planning within one type of infrastructure can be ported over. So if you want to look at transportation or urban planning, the knowledge that is picked up by working in energy infrastructure can then be deployed there. I'm now going to pass it off to Cormac to talk about financials and risk mitigations.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ian. So I'm going to talk about risks from least concern to most concern. So our risk of least concern is that access to regional utility data is less accessible than first thought. To mitigate this risk, we've already factored in several additional sources of data, including free public data, as well as paid for private data, which is accounted for in financial projections. We've also another risk associated with the project is that due to OneQubit's lack of expertise in the utility industry, clients may not be quick to adopt our solution. To mitigate this, we're going to partner with different regulatory experts as well as regional utility companies. And in our marketing, we're going to emphasize OneQubit's data analytics and machine learning expertise in other areas. The final and most serious risk is that customer lifetime is low, customer lifetime value is low. In our current model, we've accounted for a one-time payment, and we acknowledge that this may reduce profitability potentially. To mitigate this, we'll explore potentially implementing a subscription-based model for reoccurring use of the product. And in our marketing, we'll emphasize the importance of continually using the product as a tool. Now let's talk about how long this project is going to take. We estimate development, including gathering the data, training the model, and gathering these real-world restrictions and variables, is going to take about 2.5 years. Then our Austin pilot will take about a year, and we'll hopefully develop some lessons and uh, variables that are more important in the real world. We're going to learn lessons from that. That's going to take about a year, and then when the Austin project is in the rearview mirror, we're going to look to expand to other markets.
Can you talk just a little bit about what the value is to the utility company?
Sorry, one more time.
What the value is to the utility company? What's the
Yeah,
return they get by going this method as opposed to just blanketing
for sure.
these energy storage facilities?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to cost. These governments are very cost sensitive. Like it's the public's money at the end of the day. So there's a lot of checks and balances in how far the money is going. That's definitely a huge consideration. So I think our job, our value will be in maximizing every dollar spent in your utility infrastructure.
So in this structure, how do you confirm that you have I'm watching the time like it's a
We've only got one
ticking
more
right in
slide
front of me.
after this. So.
How do you confirm that you're going to have the optimal placement that they're going to buy into that optimal placement? How do you validate that that's actually going to be the best?
I think that's what our Austin pilot is for. You build the model and you train it on past data, but at the end of the day, that's not the real world. And I think that's why we've implemented this Austin pilot program. We really want to see what variables are not useful or see what variables are not really making an impact on the model, as well as variables that we may not have considered. And I think that once we have that Austin project and we have the results that we're able to showcase from that as well, it's a lot easier to market to new regional utility companies.
So is it fair to say then that the value pitch to the utility company is you're going to use fewer number of these facilities that you're going to need to build, and therefore you're going to save money?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Now we can get into the financial implications of the solution. So to build our model, we graphed the functions of the various cash inflows and outflows and then simulated it over 10,000 iterations to arrive at an average NPV of 1.26 million. As you can see, if you look at the NPV distribution, a lot of our iterations fell around 1 to 3 million NPV, and we're breaking even on average at year 8. This may seem late, but that's due to the significant development costs of a project of this magnitude. I'm now going to pass it over to Carrie to conclude.
So the core question that we're answering today is how one qubit can innovate within the machine learning space to also leverage the future of quantum computing. And ultimately, we answer three main asks: what the best use case is, what the use case will look like, and who our customers will be. There were two main recommendations. One, our big idea, which is using energy distribution, and then two, empowering customers within the utility space. So you can't solve a problem by on the same level that it was created. You have to rise above it to the next level. And we truly believe that one qubit can rise above this challenge by targeting utility companies within the energy distribution space. Thank you so much, and we welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you, team, for your presentation. The duration of the presentation was 19 minutes and 21 seconds. Judges, you have 5 minutes to ask questions. You may now begin.
Okay, yeah, I'll ask. So, I understand that after the Austin pilot, we would have the data needed to go to other clients and, show them hopefully a success story and get them on board. How do we get Austin on board, and what would the business relationship there look like?
Yeah, so just to kind of elaborate on Cormac's answer earlier, another way to convince them about credibility is bringing engineers on. So after, as Josh mentioned, it spits out kind of three potential use sites where you're going to get the most value by putting these sites around. We'd have that checked over by an engineer who actually is familiar with the system, knows what they're talking about, and then once you get that vetted, there's that reinforced learning that can be implemented to the system, as well as it's just more proof when you're working with these utility companies who may not understand this advanced technology, that it's been vetted by someone who is familiar with kind of that middle ground between advanced AI as well as their typical operations.
Could you go back to where you explained this diffusion modeling process? You're looking at basically the core of your big idea. Um, the input to this, is this existing data, or is that data which comes from the diffusion model process and is then varied with different parameters.
Exactly. So in their diffusion model, the big model here, the first step actually involves both existing data as well as augmented data. With the existing data, we first have to clean it and make sure that we have the right one going forward. But more specifically with the forecasted data, which is I think what we're more interested in, it would forecast things like potential supply for energy in the future, forecasted demand, forecasted population, and other factors as well. So it's a combination of both forecasted data as well as current data or raw data that we have.
Thank you.
Uh, a question regarding the feasibility of the solution. These utility projects, they cost a lot of money and a long time to get implemented. The capital planning for them, I assume it's quite long, 10, 15, 20 years. So do you think using quantum technology, quantum computing to solve this problem will gonna create enough revenue for the company?
Yeah, so I think where we're at right now with quantum is that it's going to be tough to implement for a solution like this. But we really feel that when it becomes a lot more feasible and economically feasible from a cost perspective, running it for our clients, we feel that it's going to provide an additional layer of granularity to the model. As we said, we're looking to just use quantum to expand the model, and that really will allow us to expand to so many other different industries as we're creating a more real world model that's more accurate to, we can immediately, we're talking about electricity, we can immediately look to other utilities as well as, I think it's the possibilities are endless once you have this system in place. So to answer your question, I think, yes, there's a lot of costs involved. I think a lot of the quantum costs involved don't take effect until later stage. And by then, hopefully, we'll already have a series of clients and who are very happy with our services. And then we can improve them using the additional capabilities of quantum.
In the Gantt chart you showed, like the first, with the timelines, the first block is 3 years developing the model. Do you have any more details on how do you plan to develop the
Yeah, so I
first
think
part?
gathering the data, as we mentioned, we've found several sources of data, including free public data and private data. So that's gathering the model, or that's gathering the data. Then it's training and testing the model, which we're going to use that data, use a portion of that data to train, and then the remaining portion to test the model. And then we're going to be developing those real world restrictions. And I think specifically for this step, that's going to involve consulting partners in the city, including government partners, people who may have a better understanding of how the economic environment works, and maybe a more qualitative information on equity-based procedures that we can implement. And yeah.
Just like within that too, a lot of the current uses are text to image or image to image. We're looking at data to image. So it's a kind of a new approach to the diffusion model. So that's why it's a little bit longer, just to account for that kind of seismic change in the use.
Thanks.
Thank you to our competitors for your presentation and to our judges for your insights and expertise. Good afternoon, competitors, coaches, judges, and honored guests. Welcome to the CaseIT 2023 finals presentations. My name is Megan, and I will be your timer today. As a reminder, the CaseIT organizing committee is filming the presentations. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our judging panel. From right to left, we have Sylvia Hinta, the Director of Technology for BranchUp and a Director of CIO Van. We also have Brendan McCabe, the Director of Enterprise Commercial Business for Western Canada for Microsoft. We have Clemens Adolphs, the Head of Applied Computing for One Qubit. Elizabetta Valiente, the Optimization Solutions Lead for One Qubit. And Eric Drexler, the Machine Learning Researcher for One Qubit. It is also my pleasure to introduce to you the judging facilitator, Peter Tingling, the Associate Dean of the SFU BD School of Business. We are so excited for your presentation, but before we begin, we would like to remind competitors of the presentation guidelines. You will have 20 minutes of unprotected time to present your solution, meaning that judges are permitted to ask questions at any time during the presentation. At the conclusion of your presentation, judges will have 5 minutes to ask questions. At the end of these periods, competitors and judges are not permitted to continue speaking, even if the time ends while they're mid-sentence. I'll be using my own device to time the presentations and Q&A period. I will also provide warnings at the 5, 3, 1 minute, and 30 seconds marks. Regardless, you are still responsible for keeping track of your own time. Please note that competitors are not permitted to reveal their university, country, or city of origin during or after the presentation. And just a gentle reminder for those in the audience, please remember to silence your phones. Thank you and all the best. Competitors, you may begin your presentation whenever you're ready.
Robert, why is Popeye so strong? I actually don't know. I wish we could ask him.
Well, in the future, you can, because OneQubit will leverage AI and diffusion models to revolutionize the entertainment and storytelling market. Today, we will go over the use cases that you suggested to us, but we will also introduce a new one, the entertainment and storytelling market. Then we present to you Personae, the way you take the first steps into interactive cartoons as a way of the long-term vision of AI-enhanced movies and games. We are Falcon Consulting, and we are very pleased to introduce to you today Personae. But let's first look at the situation that OneQubit is already in.
Thank you, Ella. So let's have a quick look at a situational analysis. What we can see is the value creation model right here. We have seen that in one of the key processes is a huge opportunity, and it is in developing capabilities in artificial intelligence and machine learning. It is important to solve intractable solutions and address and create diverse needs of businesses. Here we can also make use of the advantage of having immense partnerships, such as with Microsoft, but also being a technological pioneer. Having a quick look at the North American machine learning market size, we can see that there's actually an immense growth of almost 40% during the time of 2022 to 29, as well, because we can see that Canada is one of the world-leading research hub in artificial intelligence, and also there are many Canadian cities who are top tech talent markets in Canada. That's why we want to start a strategy here, and we believe it is a professional and perfect professional location for our strategy. So if we're going to start with the strategy right now, we can see that we're going to start with choosing a use case. Here you have a quick overview of which use cases we actually analyzed and how. So AR and VR, we see that there is a huge market, but there are many, many competitors, and it makes it hard to have a comparative advantage. For the next one, for the product design, we see that there is a low upfront investment needed, but there are data availability concerns when it comes, for example, for 3D printers in the medical imaging of medical devices. Drug discovery, on the other hand, needs a huge upfront investment, but it is also easy. This has a large market, while medical imaging, on the other hand, suffers again from huge competitors, especially when it comes to startups. Many startups are building medical devices and medical imaging devices right now. In the next part, we're going to see the video and the music and dance. What we can see for the videos is that there's actually getting quite attention when it comes to video analytics, but that's basically all there is in video. But in music and dance, they have a saturated market, but a little growth, which means that we want to find another use case.
Now, let's look at the entertainment and storytelling market. The market has been getting a lot of attention lately. There's momentum. It's easy to market to customers because you know who they are, and there are very few competitors engaging in diffusion model storytelling. However, on the other hand, it may take some technically challenging, and there are some partnerships with production companies that are very vital. However, we'll be sure to address these challenges in the rest of our presentation. Then, if we look at all the use cases and look at them from a range of criteria such as market size and growth, data availability, and technical feasibility, we can see that the market of entertainment and storytelling poses the biggest opportunity for OneQubit to analyze. So, without further ado, let us introduce to you personae.
Thank you. So how can you take the first steps into interactive cartoons with personae? What we are recommending is an interactive video generating form of artificial intelligence implemented in cartoons, meaning that children can interact with their favorite cartoon characters, ask questions, and start a conversation. How? Well, they can ask questions via the integrated microphone on their devices, such as their iPhone and laptop, or via the chat function on their on-demand products. Visualize it. A kid being able to communicate with his favorite cartoon character, Mickey Mouse, and that character coming to life, communicating with that kid in its own unique voice and movement and imaging. Why cartoons and why children? Well, cartoons are obviously a really, really big industry, but it's also fair to say that AI and video generating AI is easier to integrate for cartoons than for realistic movies at the moment. Additionally, if what we recommend is successful within the next years, it sets the precedent for other endeavors in the entertainment industry. Why children? Well, children naturally gravitate towards cartoons, cartoon themes, and characters and identify themselves with them. Additionally, they seek communication and are very curious and ask questions. So this provides a solution for that communication need and the curiosity. How can this be accomplished? Well, we recommend an integrated software, basically combining the conversational AI, a language model, a text-to-speech system, and a video-generating form of artificial intelligence. For whom? Well, for production companies, cartoon creators such as Walt Disney, Netflix, Sony Pictures. And then what will your product actually be? Well, it will serve as a foundation and as a software that represents the fundamental basis for which modules or cartoon modules per character, per cartoon can be loaded onto that artificial intelligence and it will learn from that. What you need for this? First of all, the language AI. Basically that a language model is able to respond to questions, to interactions in the form of the cartoon characters, basically portraying that character. For this, it needs to be it needs to be trained by data sets such as character scripts, plots, and other entities. You will basically provide the basic module, which can be supplemented by these cartoon modules from other production companies. Secondly, you will need the text-to-speech artificial intelligence that the character is able to respond with its own unique voice of that specific character. For this, an integrated learning-based text-to-speech system is necessary, where characters or the AI is trained on the dataset of the character's dialogue. Two possibilities are here that, for example, the production companies employ their own datasets for the particular character or have voice actors employed to generate that artificial intelligence speech. Most importantly, however, is the video generative artificial intelligence. Currently, high quality videos can be generated through standard data formation. However, it's very time consuming and consumes a lot of resources to generate high quality, accurate videos. Basically, there's nothing similar to what we are proposing yet. No combination of these three AI models with no interactive video component, video generation component. This is a huge opportunity for you. It's a novel and exciting new form of AI with huge potential. Your AI would basically need to incorporate the language and understand the language and process it into an image of the certain character via the video format. As we know that this is quite innovative and quite new, we do not recommend that you focus on all three aspects I just mentioned altogether. There are outside resources to consider, such as language models from OpenAI, ChatGPT, which you can license to use their high-quality conversational AI via their beta access, their API access at the moment. Also, there are text-to-speech systems from Google Cloud Text-to-Speech or Amazon Poly, which you can use for the high customization possibilities, voice speed, pitch, and volumes to create that unique voice of the character via artificial intelligence.
Now, is all of this technically feasible? Within the training methods, unsupervised machine learning seems to be the most promising aspect. Under the human capital, you should have no issues. You have extensive expertise in the area. For the IT compatibility, there can be some minor hurdles due to differences in processing power and language hurdles. The most pressing challenge which you need to overcome now are the processing times. At the current state, 10 to 20 seconds of delay needs to be bridged with interim media content before the AI can actually work. So how does this look in the future if this actually works? We have the base media. The base media could be a 10-minute video cartoon of Popeyes. Then we have the user input. The user input is the child asking, Why, how, Popeye, did you get so strong? So how do we get from point A to point B? This is where personae comes in. The user input is featured through a restrictive barrier to manage harmful and explicit content and to mitigate that. On top of the core AI, we have the modules that were already mentioned. In the short term, these would then be the text to
But
speech.
may I ask you a question? That restrictive barrier, who is going to decide what is being filtered in that barrier?
Sorry, could you clarify?
That restrictive barrier, who is going to decide what is being filtered out in these user prompts?
Yeah, so if you could click on the Zoom. So the restrictive barrier is comprised of a few different components. You have hard-coded restricted content. Those would then be specific, let's say, explicit words, which are just completely flagged and barred. But then you also have a surface level and context level moderation, which then NNI runs over the input and then puts this into context and then evaluates whether that content should be allowed into the input and if not. If it's not allowed, then the cartoon will just continue without anything happening. All right. So then you also have the character profile module. The character profile module learns by watching previous episodes of the cartoon, and based on that, it can create memories, goals, or beliefs of the character. Once the AI then feeds through another restrictive barrier, which then manages the output of the AI, we have the base or the media content or the media output. This is then Popeye turning to the audience and explaining how he got so strong. But it doesn't end here. This media output then feeds back into the character profile module to update Popeye's beliefs and missions and goals. Lastly, we also have a cross-user database. So if some other person at another time in the future asks the same question, the AI can be quicker in responding. So what do you actually need for this to work? The business customers will need large databases for their character profiles. And they will also have processing servers as well as high quality safe capabilities in order to manage this project. From the end consumer perspective, in the long term, if we go into video games as well, we need graphics and central processing units. But in the short term, it's mostly basic input devices such as microphones, text, or video capacities. This input is then more or less basic. It's speech to text or direct text, or in the future, also images. These then get processed by the personae AI with a diffusion model for the language and image input. And if in the future we could expand to body language content, this would then be used with k-nearest neighbor clustering. All of this is managed quite simply by using third-party devices such as smartphones or audio and video capacities.
So let's take a quick look on how we can actually market and who we can market to. So what we're really going to decide or actually propose to use right now that you target small producing children companies. This means we found two companies as an examples who are actually in Canada, such as Guru and Nelivana. We would advise you that in the next steps, as soon as possible, you contact them directly over LinkedIn, Dave Putbury and Kara Boleski, who are both the development executives of those companies. Why is it important? It is important to directly target these companies in order to gain a proof of concept. What do we mean by that? We mean that we want to get case studies. So case studies are the most important marketing strategy when it comes to sale. And both parties will actually gain an advantage. And why is that? We will have the case studies and the company can actually use it, a revolutionary and a novel software for free. The case study and having this perfect pitch is important for our next step. Our next step is targeting, after roughly 1.5 years, big producing and streaming companies in order to have huge projects and large partnerships that we can make use of in the next few years. So such an examples could be Disney, Netflix, but we especially want to focus on Paramount. And why is that? Because we want to know, how did Popeye actually gain his strength?
Now, what is our long-term vision? After you have conquered the interactive cartoon market, we propose to you to think big. So, let's expand functionality and give a truly personalized experience to all these users through, for example, story direction and story creation. You could enhance this by, for example, keyword story creation and customer customization, character customization. Furthermore, you could look into complex video games and create an immersive user experience by combining AI, VR, and haptic feedback. But how is this all financially feasible?
As we already mentioned, the main challenge of this project is the video generating AI. This is why it also makes up the bulk of the costs, as you can see, with nearly 1.8 million. Licensing and integration costs are lower, and thus make it up to roughly 2.2 million costs over the 3-year timeline. As we believe, and it is, a very revolutionary technology, content providers will be accepting to be charged a higher premium on the subscription revenues, which is why a $6 million revenue over the 3-year timeline seems definitely feasible.
But now let's have a quick look on how exactly the timeline is going to look like. So what we decided on the timeline is that we actually divided into two divisions. So it's the first steps into the creative cartoon AI and as well as the long-term vision. So for the first part, we have two main milestones. It is important that we, of course, continuously and throughout develop the technology and always improve it. But what we want to see is that within the first year, we immediately contact Brewer and Nelvana in order to have a partnership. After the first year, we want to make sure we have forward contracts finished, as well as gathered the data in order to be able to have within the second year a finished proof of concept. So when we finish this proof of concept and have the case study, we can also start after the second quarter of the second year, we can start with the marketing, which means directly contacting the big companies and having after the third year, the development of huge and large projects. When it comes to the second part, it's important to have always the AI development and the continuous improvement, and of course that in the second year maybe a market research. Within the third year, we want to actually start on working out those business use cases for the long-term vision, such as the video games or maybe even AI movies. We also give you some KPIs on which you can keep track on within the next 3 years. So one of the main one is the completion of a proof of concept, as well as having a total revenue of $6 million after the 3 years. And we want to enter into partnerships with long producing companies, so it is important to keep track of them as well.
Today, we analyzed the use cases that you suggested us with and introduced to you a new one, the entertainment and storytelling market. We presented you with Personae, your way to take your first steps into the interactive cartoons market as part of the long-term vision of AI-enhanced movies and games. So, with Personae, 1QBit will revolutionize the entertainment and storytelling market and will give all the children the answer to the question that we all have been asking. How did Popeye get so strong? Thank you. We're happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, team, for your presentation. The duration of the presentation was 15 minutes and 29 seconds. Judges, you have 5 minutes to ask questions. You may now begin.
In one word, can you answer why Popeye got so strong?
Spinach.
Thank you. Excellent answer.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for your presentation. One question I would have is, let's say after the first case study proof of concept, if word of this gets out, Amazon has Prime Video and Amazon is going to say, we're just going to do that and steal your business. What is preventing them from doing it, and how would 1QBit keep them off our backs?
Well, we actually thought about this a whole lot as well. These big players have much more resources available than 1QBit. However, first of all, this is a very new, innovative, revolutionary idea, which you would be working on, let's say, a little bit under the covers for the first bit. And then for maybe the second time period, when you're actually working with these large production companies, they would really benefit from you developing that software throughout the next 1.5 years, gaining massive advantages and working on that technology, which no one else is doing at the moment. No one is combining that to create interactive cartoons, especially the outlook towards the industry. So as we mentioned, movies or such as video games, the outlook is massive. The potential there is massive. And these the subscription model that we just described, the pricing is obviously quite a premium, but these companies have a really high willingness to pay, and the pricing we're recommending is not too high for them to go off on their own and have a 1.5 year disadvantage.
Thanks.
I have a question about the data sets we're going to be using. Where will we get that data from? Is that easily accessible? Movie scripts and such?
Yes, so excellent question. There's two aspects of this we need to consider. Firstly, there's the modules themselves by, let's say, a Netflix cartoon of Popeye. This module is then trained on previous episodes. So the data is basically provided by the client once that client has already been acquired. Naturally, we also need data to train the core 1-qubit AI, so the persona product. And this is mainly done through the forward contracts. The forward contracts essentially stipulate that mainly with the two smaller clients we're going to have in the beginning, we gain rights to use your content for the development of the AI now, and in return, you will have free access or reduced cost access to our AI in the future. There's also a few different aspects we can use, which is, for example, data multiplication through, there's a couple different techniques where you can flip images, which multiplies the data, or user feedback, but mainly it's through the forward contracts. Thank you.
I just asked Siri why is Popeye so strong and had the same answer. So why is your solution better than Siri or Alexa or something like that? What is the solution you're proposing will be better than Siri or Alexa?
So if you look at Siri and Alexa, those are mainly language models. And if I had to boil down our solution to one thing, it's combining different types of models. So what we're doing is we're not only having a language and a video generating model, we are combining those. So initially, we ask a question to the character, and then, like for example, ChatGPT, the AI generates a response. And based on that response, also a video is created. So it's a two-step process. And what we're adding is basically the second process, where based on the AI text output, also video is generated on top of that.
Have you put in a factor more than time to account for the success and the quality of the output?
You mean the time it takes to generate the AI picture?
Yeah, over and above just the time you've got in your implementation model, how have you thought about, the risk that the quality just isn't where you want it to be, that for whatever reason, the models and the technology is not quite there yet?
This is obviously a great concern. The implementation timeline was based on many assumptions we're making about your resources and the current state of the technology worldwide. We don't have the specific, maybe expert opinions or quite enough resources. The implementation timeline, to have to say, is quite flexible. So you can basically drag it out a little longer, contact the large production companies a little later, depending on the proof of concept. What we're looking at here is firstly initiating a minimum viable product, which you can market to large production companies. They are really looking for that. And once the interest is there, if you can work with them and contact them, you can make use of their resources, they will make use of your progress, and together you can use that. However, the 1.5 years to create a small minimum viable product is obviously just an
And this
assumption.
marks the end of our Q&A period. Thank you so much, team, for your presentation. Thank you to our judges as well for your insights and expertise. This now concludes the finals presentations for CaseIT 2023. Judges, Ben will now escort you to the judges' holding room to deliberate and debrief. Ben is right here. On behalf of CaseIT, to everyone else in the audience, the lovely competitors,